Welcome again to the second part of this video series, and in this video series part we will talk about the permission set in One Identity Manager. That means all the particular One Identity Manager entitlements. The first question is, what do I mean if I talk about entitlements? Maybe you have seen the first part of this video series, and in this part you have seen system users and permission groups. And that is like in other systems as well, there are accounts and groups to be permitted. On the other hand side, these groups only can work if there are entitlement objects you can assign to these groups in a way of that people who are member in that group are at the end permitted to do something. As you can see on the screen on the right side, there are many particular entitlements, starting with standard data access permissions. Remember, One Identity Manager is the database. In the database there are columns and tables. And you have to be permitted on the table level and as well on the column level. There are the typical CRUD permissions, that means create, delete, insert and update. And it is necessary to be allowed to do something in that specific system. For example, you should be allowed to insert a person record into the person table of the database. On the other hand side, and in addition to that, it might be important in an identity management project to be able to insert person objects. But you should only be able to insert values for the last name and the first name and maybe for the department and the location and the cost center. But you should not be able to change the central account, which is the login name of that particular person, or something other else. Therefore, it must be possible to have different permissions on the property level. That means on the column level. This is as well possible in Identity Manager. Additionally to that, maybe it is important to have different permissions for different set of data. For example, in a government organization, it's pretty typical that people are responsible for people where the last name starts with A down where the last name starts with D. But for all the others, from F to Z, it is not allowed to do anything. Because of that, you need permissions as well for the subset level. And this is only the table structure. Now think about other objects. For example, there are tasks where you should be permitted for to be allowed to start that task or not. There are forms you like to see. There are dialog parts where you want to see something or you are not allowed to see something. Reports could be seen by some people, for example manager, but not by the other. And so on. There are many of these entitlement objects in One Identity Manager, and it must be possible to get permissions to see something or to use something or not. In the following part, we will show you what exists and how you can use it. Very last but not least, if you look on the screen, on the left side are our authentication modules. We saw a lot of them in the first part of the video series. In this second part now, we will look on the right side. And as you can see, our old friends, the system user and the permission groups are again important. And because of that, let's start with these two objects, that means system user and permission groups, and figure out how we can use them. First thing we like to do is to talk about system users. And the first contact you can get with a system user or with generating a system user is to open Designer. If you open Designer, this is the front end, what you can see on the screen, then you see on the welcome page, that means getting started, there is something that says create a system user. It is the second option directly underneath of getting started. The reason for that is that any developer in One Identity, that means every person who is working in the identity management team and will use these configuration and development tools, needs such a system user. This is the reason why in my trainings you often hear about a development user if I talk about system users. To create such a system user, the only thing I have to do is to click on Create. And I get immediately a small form, and that says, what's the name of your new system user? Let's name it AdminUser and as well add a password. Once that is done, I can directly create this specific user and get an error message which says you are not good in typing, especially because the one password I entered is not fitting to the other. And doing it correctly, I get now a new system user. And this is the system user, what I can see now here in front of my screen. there is a specific system user, and easy to see, this system user do have a lot of permission groups assigned. These are all the checkboxes. Underneath of these permission groups, part by part, are as well some inherited permission groups, so that if I get the first level assigned, I get all the other levels automatically. If I scroll a little bit down, you can see there is not one permission group which is not assigned. And the reason for that is I was using the Getting Started page to create such a system user. We name such system user AdminUser, and you can easily see that by watching the admin flag here. This says that this system user will automatically get every permission group that exists in the whole system assigned. Only the permission groups nested in others will not be assigned. That means all single permission groups or all first level permission groups gets automatically assigned. With that, a developer user always gets every permission in the full system. And because of that, this function, it's not really a good idea if I want to create something with dedicated permissions. A second way in my designer to create system users is from the permission menu. We saw before how to create an admin user. Now we want to create a system user who is just a user without any privileges. Therefore, I just select the permissions node. Here we are. And in the permissions, I can see here all my system users. I can select one, for example, the admin user we have created before, and I can step into something we call the permission editor. Here we are. And in the permission editor, I can see for the system user, admin user, all the assigned groups. We saw that in a video before. Now I like to create a new user. And to do so, I just step to user and say create new user. Here we are. This is a new user. This user can have a name. I name it, for example, TestUser, and a password. In difference to the user before, we don't check the flag administrative user. And with that, I will not get automatically permission groups assigned. If I select now that specific user from the list to watch it like the other, then you will easily see that this time here is absolutely nowhere one of these groups assigned. With that, I have now to assign every particular permission group I want to assign on my own. In a very last step, I like to show you now how these system users will work. I think everybody, it's clear that there will be a difference in permissions, especially because this user will not have any permissions, as we can see that on the screen. But here is the proof. First, before I can use these system users, the main important thing is I have to store both system users I created into the database. Therefore, I have to hit on commit to database. Here we are. I save all the changes, and I have to wait until the complete user calculation in the database is done. Back to my manager, which is my main data front end. I sign off the manager, close the connection, and create a new connection. And the first thing I like to use is the system user I created with admin privileges, which is my admin user. And it comes with a password. Here we are. And it looks pretty similar to what we saw before. This is my full dialog where I can see nearly everything. And the reason for that is an admin user. Now I try to do the same close connection with my newly created test user. Yeah, it's a system user as well, with a password like before. And here we are. And as you can see, pretty nearly nothing. There is just my one identity manager, which is one menu entry without any filters there. And I can access exactly nothing. The reason for that is I do not have any permissions. And the reason for that is, as we have seen in Designer, there is no permission group assigned. With that, we saw two created system user. One with admin privileges and getting automatically updated all the time there is something new in the system, and one system user without anything.